Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for attending this Next Generation Leadership Collective Manifesto for Leadership launch. It's wonderful to see everyone who has joined us. We are very excited to share this document that arose from a series of conversations we had among groups of women that are working in public health, food policy, and food systems and nutrition. My name is Namara Rebecca, and I've been part of the Next Generational Leadership Collective since November 2020. I have been involved in organizing the Changemaker Connect forums that that many of you have been a part of, and in writing this manifesto for leadership as well. In the next hour, we'll hear from women from across the globe in our experiences and commitments to transforming how we lead and who leads, with a keynote from Dr. Jemima Njuki, Head of Economic Empowerment at UN Women. We encourage you all to post and share about the event and use the hashtags that Elaine will be posting in the chat. To begin with, a few members of the Next Generation Collective Task Team will introduce themselves and provide some background around this manifesto for leadership. I will now hand over to Namkolo.
Good day to all of you. My name is Namkolo Kovic. I'm currently the Director General's representative to Ethiopia for the International Livestock Research Institute, and also the current president of the African Nutrition Society. I am a member of the Next Generation Leadership Collective Task Team, which was formed in 2020 after the COVID-19 pandemic hit the entire world, and discussions that ensued around the impacts on food and nutrition systems. As a collective, we realized that solutions to poor quality diets and inequitable, unsustainable food systems exist, but that what is missing is also the leadership that is needed to put these solutions to work in different settings under different circumstances. Now, because of this, we rise today to say the transformation we need to accelerate progress towards a well-nourished world is going to take courageous leadership capable of navigating the complex systemic changes we face. It will mean unleashing the power of women to redefine leadership and imagine new systems, and will take leadership with purpose.
Thank you, Namkolo. My name is Karina Hawkes. I'm with the Centre for Food Policy at City University of London, and I'm a co-founder of this collective, and it's a pleasure to be with you here today. The Next Generation Leadership Collective was established because we believe affecting real change towards a world where everyone eats well, underpinned by food systems that regenerate the planet and support equitable livelihoods, will take a transformation in who leads and how they lead. So our purpose, the purpose of the collective, is to create a leadership movement towards a well-nourished world. Our vision is courageous leadership practices in action at all levels for more impactful decision-making in nutrition and food systems.
Thank you, Karina. I'm Anne-Marie Tho. I'm a founding member of the Leadership Collective. I'm calling in from Sydney today, from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, whom I acknowledge and pay respects to. Through discussions we held in 2021, the Next Generation Leadership Collective came to a shared vision of what leadership needs to look like to rise to the complex challenges of achieving a well-nourished world. We identified specific leadership practices, the things we can actually do in our everyday leadership, wherever and whatever level we are at. These leadership practices, we believe, are needed to push towards systemic and sustainable change. We identified too the differences we believe they can make. We wrote this manifesto to set out what these 8 practices are and why they matter. The practices are drawn from existing evidence and from our own experiences of leadership, grounded in our daily work and lives. They reflect existing understandings of the leadership needed to change complex systems. As the manifesto shows, all 8 practices are interconnected and all are equally important.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I'm Elaine from the Philippines, and I'm currently based in Taiwan. I'm part of the founding member of the Next Generation Leadership Collective. Okay, so the manifesto contains a clear call to action, a call to everyone who works in nutrition and food systems to integrate the 8 courageous leadership practices into the way you work as best you can, from whatever level you lead, whether as an individual, community, company, or institution. Test them, try them, and study them. You're likely practicing some already. Others will also be harder. Work out how each applies in your context, career stage, and sector. And for those with the power to do so, enable and reward these practices.
Thank you, Elaine. So next, we're going to hear from 2 senior women leaders who will share with us what their experience has taught them about the leadership really needed to affect change in policy and practice in nutrition and food systems, and how this connects to the manifesto. Because we've got a session later on today, we have put these as videos. So thanks for their patience as we get these videos going. We're going to start with Maisha.
My name is Maisha Hutton, and I'm the Executive Director of the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, an alliance of over 60 civil society organizations across the 20 countries of the Caribbean Community, or CARICOM. We are united around a central goal of tackling obesity and NCDs. I'm really honored to have been asked to share personal experience demonstrating how elements of the manifesto have been reflected in my personal leadership. So when thinking about the courageous leadership practices, I felt that HCC's recent advocacy for front of package nutrition warning labels in the Caribbean really provided a good example of how the application of these types of practices has strengthened my own leadership. Last year, HCC was one of the key drivers of a regional movement, a groundswell, if you will, of diverse actors from varied backgrounds uniting around the promotion of healthier food environments. Ultimately, the warning labels were not approved, but we were instrumental in building one of the largest public health campaigns our region has seen. We truly connected for collective action. We knew that our success was very much hinged on cultivating a strong, varied, unified public health voice to create the political space for policy support. A big part of building this coalition was tackling hierarchies, recognizing and acknowledging the value of all actors, regardless of where they sat on the totem pole, and also by creating space for new voices to be heard, and by lifting them up in spaces of power, especially young people and people living with NCDs. And doing this, anchoring our campaign with these voices really helped to ground us in our social purpose. Challenging power hierarchies is particularly difficult when facing well-resourced and highly influential opposition in small settings like the Caribbean. As you can imagine, this was a David and Goliath type scenario. We had to be smart. How do we as civil society begin to confront institutionalized and cultural power imbalances? We had to ensure that the coalitions felt safe and protected to be effective. We had to revisit the goals while balancing risks. How far did we want to go? As a small, vulnerable organization, as a woman in a male-dominated space. This wasn't easy. I personally had to step back and reflect on what we wanted to achieve and at what cost. I called on colleagues, senior and junior, for advice. I had to ask myself, were we listening? Was I listening? Was our listening selective? Were we engaging with all of the actors? Were we acknowledging all perspectives? And so we made mistakes along the way, but we were persistent. We learned and we adapted our strategy. And we ultimately did this as a coalition, aligned in our purpose and our vision. As a result, we were able to convene almost 50 regional institutions, over 300 public health professionals, and contribute to 6 countries voting in favor of front of package labeling. We all know getting one country to vote in favor of these policies is a tough task in of itself. So, in summary, I'm really thankful for that experience, as it was a period of tremendous personal leadership growth for me. I'd like to congratulate the inspiring women at the helm of the Next Generation Leadership Collective for creating this powerful manifesto for leadership aimed at helping us move closer towards achieving a well-nourished world. Thanks.
Thank you to Maisha for sharing that inspiring story. And what Maisha spoke about is drawn very much from the content of the manifesto, which we're releasing today. We're now going to move on to another senior leader, this time from academia.
My name is Tilakavati Karupaya, Tilly for short. I am a professor at the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences in Taylor's University, Malaysia. I think today's launch of the manifesto is so important, as it recognizes some really big things that leadership needs to do if we are to collectively achieve a well-nourished world. One of those is to tackle the power hierarchies and dynamics holding back transformative ideas and innovations. This is a tough thing to do, but something I believe we can all do in our own way. When I started my career in nutrition in the early 1990s in Malaysia, this was a period of rapid globalization of the food system and harmonization of the global diet. At that time, joining professional societies seemed to be the only participative way of being or getting into the nutrition scene. These bodies were the medium to update, network, and attain peer influence. So we all zealously attended these meetings that were being sponsored generally by the newly rising food industry. Now, the merging of private food companies, civil society, and academia during this era had an incredible impact on young researchers, creating norms about what to do and how to do it, and shaping policies like the dietary guidelines. The cozy relationship between academia, civil society, and industry in Malaysia created policy inertia and crowded out space for new evidence and ideas that were coming forward about the commercial determinants of nutrition. So I decided to step out of societies despite earning the disapproval of my colleagues and seniors, and began to work with colleagues globally on research on food environments. In 2021, however, I decided to rejoin societies, realizing it was imperative to work collectively to change the dynamics of institutionalized power hierarchies which were strangling commitments to population nutrition in Malaysia. One of the things I noted was the same person has been president of this society for 27 years. I felt if we were to make change, we needed to elevate the voices and decision-making power of a broader diversity of leaders. So I worked with like-minded colleagues to get him to step down. While we did not manage to do this, in our own way, we began to disrupt mindsets and help people think differently about what it will really take to improve population nutrition in Malaysia. We know that it will take time, but it won't happen without leadership which is prepared to disrupt power hierarchies of all forms, leadership that will tap into and implement ideas from a larger collective. It's only with this type of leadership will we get a better deal for food and nutrition for our population. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is...
And thank you very much for Tilly for recording that during what she said was a very heavy rainstorm. So thanks to her and to Maisha. And it's interesting, we asked for Maisha and Tilly to pick up on the aspects of leadership they thought were most important. And we set out 4 of those in the manifesto around changing the imperatives that prevent commitments from being converted into action, navigating across different perspectives and conflict inherent in complex systems, and the importance of addressing fragmented governance. And the 4th one is tackling the power hierarchies and dynamics holding back transformative and ideas and innovations. So it was interesting to us that the 2 women decided to focus on that aspect of tackling power hierarchies, which I think we all know is so critical. And now, and it was really fantastic to hear their experiences. And now we're going to hear from women who've been part of our Changemaker Connect forums on the specific leadership practices and how they've impacted how they've worked and the leadership that they have taken and their perspective on the specific leadership practices needed to address these big leadership challenges. So please, Madiha.
Hello, I'm Ahmed with Canada's International Development Center. I'm a senior program specialist in our climate resilient food system team based here in Ottawa, which is the traditional unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin people. I'd like to talk today about something that I and my colleagues are very proud to be working on, our research investment in transformation of food systems, where we focus on the change pathway for a food system that is fit for purpose. So essentially one that is resilient, healthy, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. Most importantly, one where equity-seeking groups set the agenda and lead the change process. But how did we get approval and funding for this work stream that centers research questions on shifting power relations? Here we applied the leadership practice of connecting with each other for collective action. So let me set the scene. I work in a bureaucracy where the risk appetite for radical approaches is very low. In 2019, a life pre-pandemic, I wanted to work on structural inequality, and this resonated with other colleagues, but it was dismissed at senior levels and it wasn't integrated into our 10-year plan. Persistence, however, does pay off. Applying lessons on organizing from my work with our union and the DEI affinity groups that I've been part of, for the past 18 months, I've been working with colleagues collectively on designing this workstream on transformation of food systems, with a focus on research led by equity-seeking groups such as Indigenous communities, displaced populations, women with low incomes or precarious employment. Now, this workstream is outside the comfort zone of our regular programming because it requires us to take on a larger risk. It was made possible because instead of putting forward ideas as an individual, like last time, which can then be dismissed as they go up the chain, this was a plan championed by multiple people in the team. We used a collective to keep each other motivated, even as we received innumerable requests to revise and reword. This peer collaboration was also strategic, as by consensus, we didn't push forward other ideas that could have competed for funding. Not surprisingly, this employee-led collective reflects the diversity that exists in our workforce. So it's a story of the power of a collective in influencing our institutional direction. For now, a $20 million investment, but with room to grow, creating a space where we can together prioritize social purpose and truly value contributions regardless of hierarchy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Madiha. Really beautiful story. My name is Michelle Grant, and I'm a leadership coach for food system professionals and also a lecturer in sustainable food systems at ETH Zurich. And today I would really like to speak about leadership practice number 6, which is reflecting individually and collectively. So what are we talking about with this practice as a departure point? I'd like to start this by thinking about just the sheer number of things that clamor for your attention from the moment you wake up. You're bombarded with emails, with news, with new insights, with colleagues' needs, with family needs. The list is literally endless, and maybe you feel yourself tensing up as I start to list it all out. And the trouble with this is if we're not intentional about it, we can really spend our entire day and thus our entire lives just pulled on autopilot from one thing to the next without a pause. And the problem with this is there is no space when we work like that. There's no space to look back and understand what really happened. There's no space to look forward and understand what is our intention and which direction are we really going. And there's no space to reflect all of that into the actions that we take in the present moment. And this, from my experience, can lead us all to make a lot of suboptimal decisions that don't factor in our own biases and assumptions, that don't understand possible unintended consequences of our actions, which, when we're talking about complex food systems, is just so incredibly important. And so when we can stop and create space to reflect, as this leadership practice suggests, we are able to make the unconscious conscious. And that opens up a lot of new opportunities for us to see what's really at the root of the problem that we're trying to tackle, to understand how we, perhaps as individuals or as groups, might be getting in the way, and to also see what our blind spots might be and who we would need to talk to and bring into dialogue to understand better what we're actually working on. And if we don't stop and create the space for reflection individually and collectively, I like to think of it as if we would all be ants, and maybe we agree to walk together in a particular direction for food systems transformation. But if we're not reflecting, we don't realize that we're walking on the back of an elephant that might even be going in completely the opposite direction. And so reflecting allows us to make that unconscious elephant conscious, and it gives us a whole range of possibilities to choose and act differently. And in my personal work, I've seen a profound impact from this practice on me personally. It helped me by stopping and carving out space to reflect, understand better what my strong zones are, what fulfills me, and how I can harness that to make an impact. And importantly, what spaces are not the right spaces for me. I've seen how it supports the leaders that I coach to understand the problems that they're tackling from a completely different perspective, to see the role their organizations are playing differently, and to open up new ideas for how they can collaborate and tackle these big systemic challenges. And in teams, I've seen how stopping to reflect can help us uncover these emotional and identity conversations that are always going on underneath the surface, but if we don't tackle them, can really get in the way of us collaborating effectively. The great thing about this practice is we can engage with it immediately. We can engage with it today. It just requires us giving ourselves permission, both individually and collectively, to really slow down, to, so to speak, go up to the balcony and look down at the play and understand a little bit better what's actually going on behind the scenes, and to have the courage and the compassion to ask ourselves questions and face the answers that we unearth in the process. So I wish you all some time and space for individual and collective reflection today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. And really that metaphor of the elephant resonates with me. I use that a lot as well. So my name is Wilma Waterlander, and I'm an assistant professor working at the University of Amsterdam, and doing a lot of work on food systems and food policy, and trying to have an impact that way. And I'll talk about the leadership practice one, having a prioritizing social purpose. And I think this practice, it seems obvious. I think all of us want to have some form of societal impact as we do our jobs or our normal lives, but it's very easy to get lost along the way. And especially what I see in my experience as working in academia, that people feel that they are part of a system, an academic system, and that they have to commit to that system in terms of getting publications out or writing certain grants, and that maybe that your true interest doesn't fit within that academic system. And so that I see a lot of people get sidetracked by just a focus on becoming a professor or getting tenured instead of their social purpose. And my experience is you can stay in academia but have a social purpose, but just have to do it. So you don't have to write all these papers or write a grant if you don't feel it's on within what you want to do. You can do other things like talk to politicians or get involved in debates and public debates and commissions, and your academic work doesn't have to suffer, and people will really appreciate you for doing things slightly differently. And even though it might take longer and you might not get what you need, but I think it's really important. And what helps me is that at the end of the day, I visualize when I retire, would I rather have 200 publications or have made a difference. And for me, it's really the latter. And every day that helps me in making these smaller decisions to think about where I want to be in 20 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Wilma. Very inspiring to hear what you've said and what the others have said. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Thank you to the Collective Task Team for inviting me to talk about and share my experiences. My name is Liz Ogutu, and I'm the Africa Policy and Advocacy Officer for Harvest Plus, a program of the CGIAR that promotes biofortification or nutrient enrichment of staple crops. My work with nutrition started in 2005 when I first worked in fundraising for vulnerable women and children, and continued as I worked to fundraise for research on animal-sourced foods, food security, and food safety. I'm going to talk about the leadership practice of lifting others up. I have done this in many instances, especially now that I'm going towards the end of my career. But what I would like to share today is an occasion where I asked two ladies reporting to me to write a paper that would ultimately lead to more recognition of their brilliant activities in country policy implementation. This was about sending the elevator back down, as Jemima likes to point out from time to time. Jemima and I are good friends and we've worked together in many occasions. Unfortunately, however much I encouraged them, it did not take place. And I realized after leaving the organization that sometimes we need to get into that elevator, to encourage people to get in and assure them that it is actually going up. I'm sure some of you have pressed the up button when the elevator comes along. You get in a hurry and find it is going down. So that's one of the challenges or failure on my part I have come across in lifting others up. The second challenge with this specific situation was that there was no allocation or KPIs within the organization that recognized the importance of this practice. So HR within organizations need to allocate time and provide incentives for women and men to lift others and for junior professionals to be allowed time for personal development. The third challenge we encounter is when peer competitiveness causes barriers in trying to elevate junior professionals, and those in leadership need to recognize and counteract this practice. I am dedicated to get into that elevator so that I can assure others that it is going up. I'm also on the lookout for men allies who will actively encourage female leadership when these men reach the top. We know that men occupy more leadership positions, and I have personally benefited from men who have encouraged and pulled me up to leadership positions. I'm also happy to seed power and let others shine as we move towards a well-nourished world. Thank you.
That was really amazing, Liz. So inspiring. Hello, everyone. My name is Shweta Khandelwal, and I work as the Head of Nutrition Research and Additional Professor at the Public Health Foundation of India, Delhi. I've also been the Program Manager for the India Task Force Lancet COVID Commission for the past 16 months. I thank the collective for this opportunity to share my experience around these leadership practices. And today, I chose to speak on deviating from the norm, or being on the road less traveled, if I may say so. I think this is because I believe that this particular point is the fulcrum, the anchor for this manifesto. The other pieces like the purpose, the conflict management, addressing governance challenges cannot function without innovation, cannot function without taking risks. Public health and nutrition, especially in India, has been on this sort of challenging journey for the last 10 to 15 years. We've seen it go up and down during these COVID times and things like those. But from early on, especially during my PG days, my post-graduation days, I was a bit uneasy to see nutrition being equated as only producing diet charts or doing a calorie counting science. What really mattered to me was to go and engage with people in the community, understand their needs, and help understand how this data from the field actually influences policy. And I was very surprised to find very few trained nutrition people out there doing this, chain building. So therefore, capacity building or capacity strengthening has been on my mind from the very start. And so in terms of the expertise and skill set which was required to handle such an ask, I thought, started looking back at the curricula of the nutrition courses. And we spent a couple of years in the beginning building up and understanding what exactly nutrition was teaching, especially in India and South Asia. And of course, public health nutrition was very, very scanty and scattered all over to be able to make you an equipped professional to handle such challenges, whether it was epidemiology, whether it was research methods, programs and policy aspects. These were all very crucial in building back better, but they were very, very nascent, if I may say so, in the courses. So I pride myself in taking up this challenge and actually designing an internationally vetted curricula for public health nutrition in India. Of course, it was with a big team effort, and a lot of you were my reviewers as well. This was back in 2010. And today, after 12 years of running that course from Public Health Foundation of India, we also see several other collaborations with different universities and taking this course forward. But I think the reason to deviate from the norm of not following nutrition to just become a nutrition counselor or a weight loss counselor was very important for me as a person. So with that, in summary, a combination of relentless commitment to make the difference and using innovative integrative approaches will help you inspire and stay inspired. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shweta. My name is Katie Pereira-Kotze from South Africa, but living in the UK, and I'm working in the field of protecting, promoting, and supporting optimal infant and young child feeding. I'm going to be speaking about leadership practice number 8, speaking openly and authentically. So my interpretation of this leadership practice is to be honest and genuine, transparent, and to communicate truthfully, even if it can sometimes be difficult. So when communicating with people, I try to be as open as possible, but the result of this has been varied, and it can sometimes be challenging to apply. For example, I recently spoke openly and it led to conflict, but the feedback I received afterwards was that I was honest and showed willingness to resolve the conflict that had existed. So I do feel that speaking openly and authentically is something I'm willing to practice and try hard to learn from, and making mistakes while doing it. But it's also important to remember that there can be a fine line in being open and transparent when it comes to sharing confidential information. And there's the possibility of losing trust with someone for sharing something that was shared in confidence. So the practice of speaking openly and authentically does take some thought and planning. While it might sometimes be easier or sometimes necessary to take the path of least resistance and avoid speaking about difficult topics, there are times when we need to be brave, and one of the overarching principles in the Leadership Manifesto is that of courageous leadership. So I'd like to encourage all of you to firstly not allow any potential disadvantages of speaking openly and authentically to stop you from using this practice, but secondly, to try to create spaces where others feel safe to speak openly and authentically so that we can say what needs to be said and find solutions to the big problems while we're working towards achieving a well-nourished world. Speaking authentically and openly can be done in an appropriate and polite manner and will always be the right choice when social purpose is being prioritized. And there are more details about speaking openly and authentically and all of the other leadership practices in the Leadership Manifesto that's been launched today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Two women we asked to speak weren't able to join us at the last minute, so we're now going to move to a couple of videos.
Hello everyone, I am Brenda Shinet Namugumia. I work at Fahinin Center for Development Innovation as a Food and Nutrition Security Advisor. I am happy to share with you my experience and practice of the leadership principle on lifting others up. For me, that principle is best summarized by a quote of a famous country song musician, Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton says that if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more, then you're an excellent leader. That summarizes this leadership principle. And there are a few simple acts that I have experienced through this and also practiced. The first simple act is showing others what is possible and what can be possible. That is opening doors for others. This is in terms of negotiating opportunities, in terms of increasing visibility of available opportunities. These opportunities may be in terms of jobs, economic opportunities, education opportunities, networks where someone can benefit from these networks. Another way of lifting others up is through mentorship. I am very, very proud that I will have mentored or engaged in mentoring a group of young people through the Uganda Nutrition Fellowship program, where the aim was to create leaders in nutrition within my country. And I always follow these young leaders to see what they are up to. I must say that I'm very proud of the work that they are doing and the fact that they are continuing to practice how to lift others up in their different jobs that they are doing. I have two more points to make. That lifting each other up is about also appreciating and giving credit where credit is due. And this involves stepping aside and let others shine. One of my former supervisors told me, if I did not step aside, people would never know that you are the one doing most of the work. So for that, there is need to give credit where it's due, because it's about giving others, letting others shine, be it in research or in work. Also, it's about the simple act of recognizing others, making them feel that they do exist, that they are known. Simple acts such as good morning to them, finding out how they are feeling at work, remembering their birthdays. These are things that make work and life interesting. And lastly, lifting each other up is about perseverance, waking up every morning and make a decision that you're going to lift someone else up. You're going to make them shine. That's how legacies are created. Thank you very much.
I am Folake Samuel from Nigeria. I am sharing briefly based on my experience and role as a key officer in my country's foremost professional society for nutrition. In our society, the last few years have ushered in a new season to transform our professional body from a supporter to a major facilitator of improvements in the nutrition landscape in Nigeria. Being in the front line with others who have challenged the old organizational ideology and structure of the society has been both a challenging and rewarding experience for me. I can say this because of this leadership practice that I'm about to briefly discuss, that is connecting with others for collective action. I value this practice because I have seen it work to build commitment and sustain actions towards a new goal in my country. How did I practice this? First, it started with self-realization that things can be done in a much better way than we currently know it, and that I could actually ask for more. The next step was that I began to connect with different individuals and groups of people in my society to show them why together we needed to ask for more, such as getting more out of being members of the society, or more of having strategic engagements and impact on the nutritional well-being of Nigerians, as advocated in the vision and mission of the society. The result was that connecting with others in asking and yearning for more became a powerful activating force for collective action. We were able to break barriers, sit together at the discussion table, and establish group thinking and action for a common goal. And this was done among different stakeholders across generations, across cultures, sectoral divides, and gender. Although this seems to be a success story, I must mention that there were times that I received subtle and outright pushbacks against this leadership practice, interestingly from both males and females. However, I have learned that there is a great value in connecting with others for collective action, and it just needs patience, courage, and eagle eye focus. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all those incredibly inspiring stories. One of the philosophies, if you like, in the manifesto is that the way we practice our leadership is in the everyday. It's in the small, often unseen spaces, which may not be celebrated. It's behind closed doors. It's the smaller decisions that we make. It's not necessarily about being heroic and very visible. And I think what I have taken from these wonderful stories that we've heard today is just how many women are out there being very courageous in their own spaces in a way which is hidden and not yet celebrated. And what we hope to do is to try and expose this in all its positiveness and to celebrate it, while understanding that leadership will always be grounded in our everyday practice, and we should continue to advance that idea. So thank you so much for those leaders for sharing with us the practices that you are intentionally taking and modeling and inspiring others to do so. So now I'm very excited that we're going to move on from the how we lead to the who leads. And we're going to hear from Dr. Jemima Njuki, who recently began her new role of Director of Economic Empowerment at UN Women. Jemima has an amazing and distinguished career as an advocate of gender equality. Before she joined UN Women, she was Director of Africa for the International Food Policy Research Institute, where one of her many achievements was leading the design and development of Global Food 50/50, an indicator and mechanism for gender responsibilities in the organisations that work in global food systems. Over to you, Jemima. We can't hear you.
And now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's been such a pleasure sitting here listening to all these wonderful testimonies and wonderful leadership attributes that people have been practicing, but to also be in such a warm, I call this a warm collective of women, where we really, even just from the conversations, from how we are engaging each other, that the role is to support each other, to build each other, to share knowledge, to share ideas of how we can continue to lead with honesty, to lead with integrity, to lead with empathy. So it's such a special group for me. Actually, every time I join the collective, I wanted to speak this morning and by actually telling the story of the last 2 years and what I've been doing the last 2 years and what that has taught me about women's leadership. So in 2019, the UN Secretary General called for a UN Food Systems Summit. And as he made the announcement that there would be a food systems summit in 2021, he appointed Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the president of AGRA and the former minister for agriculture in Rwanda, as the special envoy for that summit. And as Dr. Kalibata, and first she formed a small team of people, and as they were developing their architecture for the Food Systems Summit, they decided to have what they call the lever of change on gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. And because they recognized the centrality of gender equality and women's empowerment in food and nutrition security. And I got a call from Agnes, who asked me, would you like to lead that work? And I said, yes, I would like to lead that work. Now, two issues here. One, Liz talked about sending the elevator back. And sometimes we assume we are the only ones sending the elevator back for other people. And we always have to look up and see the people who are also sending the elevator back for us. And that is what Dr. Kalibata did for me. It might have been back and sideways and wherever. She was sitting in one part of Nairobi, I was sitting on another part. So at some point, if it was really a physical elevator, it would have had to navigate the traffic of Nairobi. But long story short, I ended up working alongside Dr. Kalibata to advance the gender equality and women's empowerment work for the UN Food Systems Summit. And what I then did is I got a group of women together, a group of gender specialists from around the world, activists who had been working on the ground, researchers, people from academia, to work with me in a team, because I realized as an individual, the ability to influence the UN Food System Summit, basically the ability to make that machinery even move an inch, was going to require a lot of women. And I needed a small group of women to help me even mobilize larger groups of women from around the world so that those voices could be heard at the highest level of that summit. And so we formed this group of women. There were some occasional men as allies, but we were very clear that the whole goal was to really mobilize the voices of women to be heard within the UN Food Systems Summit. Now, the result of this, I can tell you the intricacies of all that. They would make for a whole novel. But as a result of this work, what we ended up with is, in my view, and I have been to many of these events, global events focused on food systems, focused on agriculture, where the reference to women was in terms of their vulnerabilities, where governments came and made statements and somehow they had everything well thought out, and at the end they would say, especially for women and girls, and especially vulnerable women and children. And that would be the whole reference to the issues of women. Basically, either they were grouped in terms of their vulnerability with children, or they were, part of the ending of a sentence. It's as though the sentence couldn't end unless they put especially women and girls, right? And so for the first time, we were in a summit where issues of gender equality with respect to food systems became central to the discussions, central to the conversations. We prioritized actions. We were there when the pre-summit happened in Rome, presenting the voices of women that we had heard from around the world. I was in the opening session representing women and their priorities. In the closing session saying, this is what we need done. This is the first time it had happened in a long time. Women's voices were heard very loud and clear. Now, what did I learn from this experience that is relevant for what we've been talking today? I'll organize it around 2 key points, and because I realize we don't have a lot of time. One is the claiming leadership. Yeah. How do women claim their spaces? How do women claim their voices? How do women make sure that their voices are where they are needed, where decisions are being made, and especially those decisions that affect them or affect the world in the way the world interacts with them? And the second one is the creating of spaces for leadership, because those are 2 different issues, right? How women claim space, but also how those spaces can be created so that women do not have to fight for them. Yeah, it was Charlotte Chisholm, the first Black US Congresswoman, who once said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring a folding chair. So there is that. But then there is, why don't you actually create a table where women can also sit? So this is the difference between these two concepts, that if you don't create space for me at the table, I will bring a folding chair, but it's gonna be very tiring because I'll be sitting on a folding chair fighting while everybody else is in a plush sofa or whatever else they're sitting on, versus actually creating a table that makes space for women. And I think generally we know it's a well-known fact that the future is better with women at the table where decisions are being made. We have had trailblazing women who have been claiming their space, but even as they claim their space, making sure they are creating spaces for others. In the same way, Dr. Kalibata got appointed as a woman to lead the Food System Summit as an envoy and reached out to others. And in turn, those that she reached out to others, creating that space to make sure that you are a critical mass. I think that the period of glorifying because I am the first Black woman in a certain space, or I am the only woman in a certain space, are over. Yeah, that we need more women in all spaces. Now, how do we create these leadership spaces for women? We know that even with record-breaking entry by women, for example, into media, into Fortune 500 companies, we know we are not there yet. So I was reading some data from last year that only 7.4% of companies on the Fortune 500 list are run by women, because we know women are still facing multiple forms of discrimination that are keeping them from advancing. So our biggest question is, how can we make spaces, including those spaces that we are leading as women? Because we also cannot assume, because we are leading spaces as women, that those spaces are necessarily inclusive, although we do know that when we have women in leadership, even the topics being discussed change. Yeah, even the environment within which work is happening changes, but this is not always automatic. It takes the intentionality that you have all been talking about. So there is also some systemic changes that need to be done, and those need all of us. They need laws, they need policies. It is why we launched the Global Food 50-50. We need to call for parental leave policies that work for women, equal pay for work of equal value, zero tolerance to workplace sexual harassment and violence, sharing domestic work so that women can actually participate in economic work, demanding equal representation of women in boardrooms. When we did the Global Food 50-50, there is 13 indicators around leadership, around policies, and around the outcomes of food systems organizations, so that they can be accountable for some of these changes in practices, so that we can start seeing large scale change in the way food systems organizations work. So I'll just finish by summarizing in 2 key points: that we cannot underestimate the power of collectives such as this, where we actually come share experiences about how we can claim space for our leadership and actually celebrate the way we as women lead. But at the same time, our spaces remain very male dominated at the moment, and we will need a lot of male allies. I think it's Elizabeth who mentioned this. We will need a lot of male allies that believe in women's leadership, that can be part of the change, that can be part of this process of creating spaces that women can lead. I'll stop there, Corina, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today, and for sharing your wisdom and your experience, which I think all of us found very inspiring, and this point about creating space and the importance of a collective, while also challenging all of those structural barriers and the importance of allies to create those spaces. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. So we do have a call for action in the manifesto, which Elaine read earlier, about trying to integrate these practices into our everyday leadership, while also calling out these structural issues that need to change. And in this, we also make a commitment to ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable, given how challenging it is to integrate these practices and to lead, given all of the challenges around us. So it is important that we commit as well to each other as a collective. And we now have in the chat the commitment that we are making in the collective. And of course, we ask everybody to join us. And I would ask all those speakers to please join me in reading out this collective commitment. So as a collective, we commit to proactively adopting and strengthening these eight leadership practices
for ourselves
as
individuals,
in our work environments and within our broader food systems and nutrition networks. We commit to lead
from where we are, to share and support the development of leadership practices in others, and to build momentum for
collective impact. We
commit
to
calling out
challenges created by the economic, social, cultural, and political asylum
in which
we work against them and to work collectively
to break them down.
In turn, we call on
everyone who works in
nutrition and food systems.
To integrate the eight courageous practices into the way we work.
Please join us.
That was wonderful. A collective, wonderful cacophony. Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely
wonderful. Over to you, Purnima, to close this event.
Thank you so much. What an amazing event this has been. A good afternoon, everyone from India. I come to you from a retreat. My name is Purnima Menon, firstly, and I'm a senior research fellow with the International Food Policy Research Institute and anchor some of our nutrition work in South Asia. It's been one of the greatest pleasures of the last 18 months or so to have had many Friday evening conversations with this remarkable collective of women. And I think, each of us is pinching ourselves in different ways, just to be at this moment, to be with all of you, to be able to launch this. So as I close, I want to acknowledge that we asked ourselves many questions in the writing of this manifesto for leadership. We've had very intense discussions, and we continue to grapple with many of the questions that have come up and that we know will come up. We are very well aware that we have much to learn. We know we must move forward in the spirit of inquiry, listening, learning, and adapting as we go. We know we don't have it all here. But we really see in that spirit, we see this manifesto for leadership as a living document. We see it as something which we must revisit as we all learn together. And so we really want to thank all of you who attended this launch today. My heart has been full really the last hour that I have been listening in. From where I am, which is a collective reflection moment that that we created for our team to be together for 2 days. And I stepped away to join this, and I really don't regret that. But I want to thank all of you who joined us today. It has been so very special. The link to the manifesto is available online. It's been shared in the link as well. And we really encourage everyone here to read it, to think about it. We hope it can serve as a resource for you. And we hope that you'll help us also come back to it, reflect on what in there is working and not working. So again, thank you so much. I should really also take a moment to thank the incredible work that Rebecca, Corinna, and Shu-Wen have done to hold us all together, the collective together. It takes every single one of us. And I'm really grateful as a member of the collective for your
beautiful leadership and commitment to all of us as well. So thank you three very, very much. Thank you everybody else. Have a wonderful day and a good evening to all of you. Back to you, Corinna and Rebecca.
Thank you to all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining.
Bye. Yeah. Thanks a lot.